Universal 7, Governance and Management is proud to present comments about the CYBERSYN project and the cybernetic revolutionaries. On September 4, 1970, Salvador Allende was elected president of Chile. His margin of victory was small, and far from being a majority. It took a vote at the Chilean Congress, after lots of negotiations, to allow his socialist-oriented coalition to occupy the presidential palace, seat of the executive power. It was, with that most fragile of electoral results, that Allende took Chile down the road towards socialism. It was an ill-fated decision that would eventually cost him his life, and that of many of his compatriots. Allende took the oath of office in November 3, 1970. The new socialist government soon began expropriating private companies and created a social sector of the economy. Based on popular support in the streets, his government took control of 150 private companies, without due compensation. This violation of the Chilean constitution was to haunt him until the day of the coup. It was then a very young, extremely intelligent and most daring engineer, by the name of Fernando Flores took action. He had an idea on how to help the government manage the fast-growing, nationalized sector of the economy. He sent a letter to Stafford Beer, the creator of management cybernetics, inviting him to collaborate in the undertaking. Stafford Beer was overjoyed. This was a heaven-sent opportunity to test his ideas at a grand scale. 4 months later, on November 2, 1971, a year into Allende's term, he arrived in Chile. He carried a draft of his new book called The Brain of the Firm under his arm. He was ready to save Chile, and perhaps even the world. Meanwhile, in the United States of America, President Richard Nixon was furious. Cuba was not alone now. Chile was becoming another socialist menace in Latin America. This was very bad for business. He decided to stop Allende. The story that unfolded was a really awful human tragedy, with worldwide consequences that have not been repaired to this day. Thousands of Chileans were murdered in the following years. And perhaps tens of thousands were tortured as the result of Pinochet's coup d'état. Allende committed suicide. Many of his aides and top officials were sent to prison, Flores among them. So, an immediate question pops up. Why Stafford Beer? The answer will appear obvious shortly. Stafford Beer's activities in Chile will also help explain why the Chilean tragedy had another very sad outcome that needs to be set straight. All over the world, we are suffering from an incapacity to truly modernize government and get rid of outdated bureaucratic institutions. Stafford's efforts in Chile should leave no doubt that he had a vision that went far beyond the socialist experiment in Chile. He was exploring a new form of governance based on cybernetics, the field of knowledge whose potential is yet to be fully appreciated. Cybernetics to the rescue. This was the science of control and communications created by Norbert Wiener in 1947. As recognized by Wiener himself, Stafford Beer was the pioneer and founder of management cybernetics, the science of effective organization. Reading Cybernetic Revolutionaries, one has to keep in mind that governments all over the world have been guessing, or using a trial and error approach. This means experimenting with huge bureaucratic organizations. The Fourth French Republic, now gone, is one example. The former Soviet Union of Socialist Republics is another example of bureaucratic failure. A third example of a huge bureaucratic organization is none other than the United Nations organization, which subsists because it is a parasitic organization, living from the pockets of the member nations, and especially the United States. And in Chile, for the first time ever in history, an attempt was made to use management cybernetics to run a good part of the economy. Stafford Beer was invited to Chile because he knew the answers to many questions that many other management scientists had not even asked themselves. Here was a man who became a philosopher, a friend of knowledge, and learned about Plato, Aristotle and Socrates at a very young age. Still a boy, he quit school because he would rather read the Greeks in their own language at the public library. Not yet in his 20s, his military adventures as a psychologist in India, during World War II, exposed his inquisitive mind to the systemic thinking of Eastern philosophy. Back in Britain, he began applying operations research in British Steel, and studying cybernetics, under the tutelage of another of cybernetics' founding fathers, Warren McCulloch. To top it off, he was a dear friend of W. Ross Ashby, who reorganized cybernetics into the science of the behavior of all possible machines imaginable. It is with this background that Stafford Beer felt compelled to go to Chile. We was trying to put cybernetics and management cybernetics in the map of science, something that to this day has not been done. Many universities don't even know they exist. Throughout the book, you will see Stafford Beer trying as hard as he can to sell cybernetics as a scientific paradigm. He said it was much more powerful than the Newtonian scientific paradigm, on which most bureaucracies are founded. Beer knew that with the laws of cybernetics having been discovered and tested, ordinary citizens could very well manage a country or a business using the VSM as a guide, instead of the authority-based organization chart, which still prevails worldwide. This is what Stafford Beer went to Chile for, to create a management revolution, applicable to both governments and private business. Cybernetic Revolutionaries is a testament to the fact that the new management paradigm, based on cybernetics, or control and communications laws, got caught in the crossfire between two ideological forces, both fundamentalist. Capitalism versus socialism. The paradox is that the VSM explains in what ways each is correct and in what ways both are mistaken. Only cybernetics has created a language where these things, such as self-interest versus altruism, or private versus common good for example, can be discussed in a manner that makes sense. Towards the end of the CYBERSYN project, at least a few socialists and even some capitalists were able to read between the lines. They would come to comprehend what it was that was really being decided in Chile in the early 70s. Another thing to keep in mind is that the founding fathers of the United States of America created a government based on checks and balances. This is another way of applying cybernetic thinking. Today we can say that the cybernetic design of the U.S. Constitution of checks and balances has remained successful in preserving individual liberties. All this in spite of the distorted electoral system and abuses committed within a representative democracy. The experience in Chile, now more than 40 years old, says that much more can be done right now that we are not doing. There are a lot of people living miserably because of our ignorance or lack of desire to get involved with innovative ideas that can change many things at once, for the better. If one is to follow Stafford's advice, we can clearly say to the newer generations that we must know what computers are good for, and how they can be turned against us by the very same people that we elect. They work under the assumption that they are in office to serve themselves and their party. This has to end, the sooner the better. Today, academia and business expect a lot from big data. However, the experience of the cybernetic revolutionaries is proof that a whole lot can be done with very little data. That a country's nervous system does not need huge amounts of data to provide us with useful information. The viable system model is as useful as an organizing tool as it is a blueprint for a computerized network. The technology that is missing is related to the human factor, not to the hardware or software. The problem is what people are being trained to ask for. We are following our technological noses, not thinking straight. That we have allowed banks and governments to grow faster than other sectors of the economy, when the use of computers should have shrunk both their sizes considerably. That the revolution from the smartphones will lead eventually to redesigning government and elections and healthcare and commerce. And so many other things, that have nothing to do with big data, and have everything to do with common sense, and making the most of the technological revolution, which is already here. The CYBERSYN project was not about technology and politics, but about the need to allow a new science to emerge with full force. It was about replacing the obsolete Newtonian paradigm, under which one half of the constitutional government, all the executive power, all over the world, is still organized. Governments, banks and universities all over the world seem afraid of something close to CYBERSYN happening soon. A redesign of institutional life using cybernetics, and its technological daughters, would get rid of the obsolete methods and governmental parasites. Governments, banks, and universities are the epitome of bureaucratic rule. Not one single of those institutions has bothered to check what CYBERSYN was really about. Thank you for watching. Please share if you liked it.